Can everyone hear me well and see the how to reach out to galleries and designers? Just before I dive into anything, can I get like a one person to say thumbs up in the chat? Just to
Yes.
make sure everything's working. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. There will be time for you to unmute and talk and communicate, but I think just for the fact that there's so many people kind of coming in maybe throughout this, I just think it's easier for everyone to be muted so that we can hear this. And my plan is to all go through the presentation for galleries, which might take anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes. I'll open it up for questions and then I'll go through all the stuff for designers, which is similar in a lot of ways, open it up for questions. And then the end can just be kind of like a free for all Q&A. Also a chance I would love for you guys to share information because I think there's probably a lot we can learn from each other. But because there's so many people, I think the easiest way to do questions is to put your questions in the chat and then I can kind of like call your name and you can unmute to ask the question when we get to that section, just so it's not like a free for all of 50 people trying to chime in at once. So we can go ahead and start. Let's see what time it is. 10:33. People can kind of come in. So first, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover. So first, I'm going to go through, like I said, galleries. And so basically the different sections are how to find galleries, research tips, organization tips. And this is kind of a broad overview based on what I know. And again, that's why y'all probably have questions. So just type them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end. Then we'll go into outreach, how to reach out, what that wants to look like, what to say, what to include, what to expect after you reach out. Because I think a lot of people, a lot of you in the membership or that I've done one-on-one coaching with ask, like how common is it to not get a reply? If they say reach back later, what does that need to look like? Timing, all of that. Also how to proceed if they do want to work with you. And then I'll go into finally how partnerships typically work, things to expect, maybe red flags, just like, is this normal? What are typical commission rates, stuff like that. Then we'll open it up to Q&A specifically for the gallery piece. And then we'll do the same thing for designers. So we'll go through research, how to find them, organization tips. Obviously, this is very similar. What outreach is going to look like, what to expect after you reach out, kind of how to proceed, because it is a little bit different. Trade discounts, relationships, all of those kind of things. And then we'll open it up for another Q&A. And then depending on time, and I mean, we can go a little bit over if we need to, but depending on time, we can kind of just open up to general questions as well. And this is my first time doing this, so I'm really open to kind of answering what you need. And also, like, I'd love to hear from you on what could change, what could be better if we do more of these live events in the future. So let's get into it. Let's see. So I'm going to move Zoom thing. So to start out, this is gallery outreach. So a lot of you are kind of like, all right, how do I reach out if I want to work with galleries? So to start, a lot of you ask, how do I find galleries? And obviously it comes with a lot of research. You can always go to Google. I think Instagram is a really great tool. And I think looking to other artists is amazing. So either asking artist friends, what galleries are they in? What have been great shows they've done? What contacts do they have? I mean, if you're not directly competing with this artist, if y'all don't have the exact same style, artists are really willing to build each other up and share information. So I think asking around, and then also if you go to other artists' websites, a lot of the times they'll share the galleries they are a part of on their site as, galleries or representation, or they might have, a CV. It's sometimes worded differently, but a lot of people do have that tab on their site. And that's a great place to just kind of find a starting point and figure out, what are some galleries I can even look at to create a list. So in terms of organization, once you kind of start to look and you're in that sort of research phase, I really prefer to create some sort of Excel, or if you're in a Mac, like a numbers document or a Google Doc or something that you can come back to. It's whatever works for you. I mean, pen and paper, I'm all about it, but I think having it somewhere on your computer is not a bad idea either. And the reason I like it is I like to have the list of the gallery, and you could kind of, make this your own too, but who you reached out to, what the conversation was, or if you haven't reached out yet, just the likelihood of you getting in, look at things like price point, who else are they, working with artist wise, like, is it more emerging? Is it more established? Obviously look at style. Do you feel like you're going to be a good fit? And I think when thinking about working with galleries, it's really important to think of beyond those things, think about location. I think, when it's your first gallery you work with, you're going to have to get the art to them somehow. And shipping can be a big pain, especially if you're shipping a lot of big pieces. And a lot of the times, if you're working with a gallery, it might be big pieces if it's an in-person gallery. And so just to, make things easier, I think if you can go drop them off in person, see the space in person, meet the gallery owner, I think that's a really great thing to consider. So when you're in this research phase, it's just good to consider location, like what's driving distance before you start reaching out to people across the country. And then I think other things to consider is just, price point, what does their customer base look like? Who are they selling to? And are the people they're selling to similar to your ideal client and who you're trying to reach? Is this going to help expand your audience, or is this going to kind of help build upon the audience you already have? And then one other thing to think about in kind of the outreach phase is, are they doing shows or do they have any active calls for art? So, I own the Scouted Studio and we do the Emerging Artist Show every year, which, some of you might know about, have applied, maybe some of you have done. That's a great way to get your foot in the door with the Scouted Studio, for example. And I think with any gallery, the opportunity that comes with, if they have a call for art, they're actively looking for artists. So it's a great way to start that conversation versus, which we'll talk about how to reach out if they don't, but you're kind of cold emailing people otherwise. And so you're just a lot more likely to actually get in front of them if they do have something active going on. So that's something definitely good to look out for. And just, again, that's where Instagram can be really handy. You can see what other artists are doing and keep tabs on that. And something I like to do, coming back to that Excel document, is if, for example, you see the Scouted Studio has a call for art every February for their spring show, because that sort of tends to be the timeline, put that in your Excel document and say, if you really want to work with the Scouted Studio, they have a call for art, every February. They also have the October show. And because there's so many artists who will reach out to me, just as an example, and say, I really want to work with the Scouted Studio. And I'll say, we're full right now. It's not a good time, but please circle back and apply for our show. And the amount of artists that don't circle back, it's frustrating to watch, because it's like you're missing a really good opportunity. I don't just say that to push people off. It's really like, we don't have the space right now, but I do want you to circle back and apply. So just, I think having dates in your organization, in your organizational form, however you decide to do it, can be something that can be really helpful. That was a long-winded start. So now I want to talk about how to actually reach out. So there's a lot of things to consider. I think getting in front of people is always helpful. So again, this is where location can be really important or really helpful. I think if you can go and actually see the gallery in person, get a feel for the gallery, is it a good fit for you? What is the gallery owner like? All of those things, I think that can be really helpful. I also think just getting in front of people is helpful. So actually going and introducing yourself and saying you're interested. I don't think you need to present yourself as like, I don't bring in art to the gallery and say like, I'm applying, but I think just make yourself known, like follow them on Instagram, just become comfortable with the galleries you're really interested in. I think, subscribing to their email list is another way to just get in front of them, know the events they're doing, know if they're doing call for arts. Like, you want to do your research before you reach out. Like the amount of people that just kind of cold email me one sentence that's like, I want to apply. And I'm like, do you even know what my gallery is? It's just not as warm as someone who really feels like, I did the research, you feel like a good fit. I want to work with those kind of people. So how to actually reach out, honestly, in this day and age, typically email. I mean, I would definitely say go to the gallery's website. They will probably have a page like for artists, how to apply. There's going to be some kind of page. If it's not a tab at the top or on the side or however their website's set up, it might be in the footer. So, it might be like a contact. You might have to kind of dig to find it, but start there, because it might give you an exact email or a person to contact. And it also might give you what they exactly need. So obviously, if they have a way they want you to apply, do that. Because there's nothing worse than when someone tells you to apply a certain way and then they don't listen, because then you're like, well, so that's an immediate way to just kind of get written off. So read that first. And then I like to have a really nice, not super long, maybe like one paragraph, a couple sentences, introducing yourself, saying who you are, why you're interested, why you like their gallery. Be really personal. Try not to make it feel copy and pasted, for lack of better words. And then you're going to include the PDF document, which I've talked about a lot, but I'm going to go into detail and actually show some examples in the next few slides of what that wants to look like. But the reason I like having a PDF document that includes all of your information and the logistics and the pricing and all of that and the art itself is it prevents you from having to say that in your email. So you're not writing this like 4-paragraph email. It gives you more room to kind of be personable. And then it also just makes you look like you know what you're doing, you're professional, even if you've never worked with a gallery before. I see that and I'm like, okay, this person didn't send me 18 attachments. They sent me one concise PDF document with all their information. It just looks a little bit more professional too. So I think that's a really good way to go. And you can have this one PDF document that you can use again and again and again. So it's going to make your application process easier. So to go into examples, let's see. So what you should include. First, it needs to be designed well. So start with Canva. I made this presentation in Canva. I literally typed it up in a Word document, and then I went to Canva and was like, okay, let's make this pretty. And that part was really easy. So if you haven't used Canva before, definitely recommend it. It's a great place to start. For the PDF documents and the ones I'm about to show you, I actually created them all in Canva. I started with a resume template and then just took out all the resume words and kind of started putting stuff in that way. So you'll see that when we get there, but that's a really great tool just if you want to make your document look a little bit better, have your own branding, colors, fonts, all of that. What it needs to include, just kind of at a minimum, I think a bio statement, information about you. If a gallery is going to work with you, they obviously want to know about you and who you are and what you do. So you're going to want to share a bio, a statement, a picture of yourself if you want. I don't think you have to, but again, people connect with people. So they do want to kind of see the person behind the work. And then if you have done a lot of shows or you have, a reasonable resume, I think include it. If you haven't, a lot of you are new artists, or those of you that I know, that's fine. Like I love working with new artists. I do not judge anyone for never working with another gallery. If anything, I'm like, wow, I discovered someone, So don't think that's a bad thing, but obviously it can be a leg up if you have it to include it. Definitely include great photos of your artwork. Now, what I will say, this is kind of a side note, and this is sort of a tech thing, and I'm probably not going to describe it the best way, but when you download your PDF document, you want to make sure it's not, when you're putting in a bunch of high-res photos, it's going to become a huge file that you're not going to be able to email. So you're going to want to download it as a lower, like a PDF for, what's it called? PDF standard is what it's called in Canva. So you don't need to do a PDF for print because it's going to be like a 30 megabyte file that you can't attach in an email. You're going to want to save it. This is kind of a side note with the photos. You're going to want to save it as a lower file so you can actually attach it to your email. And also I don't want to download a 30 megabit, whatever MB file to my computer and then have my computer like freak out because it's so big. So that's something to remember. So you do want to include great photos of your work, but because it's online, and the exact numbers of this, I don't totally understand, but they don't need to be the highest level of quality because it's online. So it can be, I think it's 300 DPIs for print and only 72 for online. So if you're scaling stuff down, don't hold me to this. This is not my area of expertise. I'm just giving you the information. You don't want to send a huge file. But you obviously don't want your photos to be bad or blurry. And then finally, you're going to want to include your pricing because they're going to want to know where you fall. And what, are you within range of what they're doing? And that might be a conversation. Some galleries are more old school and they're going to want to just see your pricing and work with you. Some people like me, like I am happy to work with artists and, if you want to talk, but I'm also an art coach, but if you want to talk through pricing with me, all of that, that's also okay too, if you're a newer artist and you don't have that fully established yet. So we're going to go into examples. So I'm going to give you 3 examples. Again, these aren't fully done. This is just stuff I put together in Canva, kind of with an idea of what to include. So this is a very simple example. If you have, don't have a ton of artwork yet, but you're kind of working on pulling stuff together, you're going to want to have a statement, bio, pricing, contact information at the bottom with like a photo of you and some photos of your artwork. That is like bare minimum, but I would open this and I would say, okay, I see what they look like. I see their pricing. I see their style. It shares everything it needs to. So I think if you don't have a ton of photos yet or anything like that, this is kind of option 1, simple. Option 2 is if you have a little bit more work, I obviously didn't put photos in for all of these, but you kind of get the idea. I think you can do a 1 page with pricing statement, all of your writing, and then have multiple pages with your artwork. I mean, obviously galleries need to see the artwork. That's where they're going to decide if they want to work with you or not. So if you need to have multiple pages of your artwork, that is completely fine. This is not, I've had to clarify for this for people before. This is not a resume where it needs to be 1 page. There is no limit. I mean, I don't want to open a 50-page document, but if it takes you 5 pages to accurately show all of your artwork in spaces, give your pricing, all of that, if it makes more sense to space it out and not have it all crammed into like 2 pages, that is completely fine. There's no limit. Just be reasonable with it. And then the third example, so this is kind of a good example if you have multiple different styles. So obviously you could have something like a cover page. You don't have to, but if you have a logo and some strong branding, that's something you can do. A page about the artist, a page with pricing. And then if you are the type person that you're like, well, I paint abstracts, but I also paint, marshes on canvas versus, abstracts on paper. A lot of you are like, oh my gosh, I don't have one style. I don't paint one thing. That is completely fine. I think there's sort of 2 ways to go. You can either put forward one collection that you think is the best fit for the gallery, or if you're like between 2 or between 3 and you don't know, you can just separate it into different pages like I did here. So, there's no right or wrong answer. It's kind of just your gut feeling. But I do think obviously we're artists, we have an eye for this stuff, or at least maybe you have a gut feeling of what's going to be a better fit for a gallery. And at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of galleries are going to go to your Instagram, they're going to go to your website, they're going to see your other work. So I have plenty of artists that apply and maybe they'll send me, florals. And I'm like, these aren't a good fit right now, but I'll go to your website and I notice you do abstracts. And I'm like, oh, I would love to do those. So, it's not an end all be all, but I do think if you're between stuff and you don't know exactly what to send, you can break it up this way. So those are my 3 examples. And then messaging. So again, this kind of comes back to the email. Keep it simple. Be real, be yourself, show that you did your research. Do not copy and paste, spell things right. I mean, especially the gallery person you're reaching out to. I mean, usually their email it's in, their name is in their email or it's listed somewhere. People spell my name wrong all the time. I don't get offended by it because people have spelled my name wrong my whole life, but a lot of people will, it's kind of like, you don't want to have a typo in your resume. So just, proofread. It takes 2 seconds. And then obviously don't copy and paste. Like it's pretty easy to read people reaching out and you can tell if they copy and pasted and sent this to 5 other galleries. So just kind of, and you can reuse a lot of the same messaging, but just tweak it enough that it feels personal. Okay. So what to expect? Not everyone's going to respond. Not everyone's going to say yes. I think something I tell a lot of people, because I don't say yes to everyone that applies to the Scouted Studio, a lot of the times it's timing, they're not accepting new artists or they have someone really similar to you at this time. And that's not a knock on who you are. And that's why you just have to keep applying. If they say, reach back out, if timing is a big factor. I think style is a big factor. You might just not be a good fit. And again, you might not be a good fit right now. So don't take it to heart. Price point. I mean, you do need to be pretty consistent with your prices. A gallery doesn't want to charge, a lot of them don't want to charge vastly more than what you're selling stuff on your website because their customers are just going to go buy directly from you. So you might just not be at a price point that works with them quite yet. And finally, they might just not be taking new artists. That's, another common reasons. If they do want to work together, have consistent prices. Like I just mentioned, be organized. Like you were organized reaching out, be organized throughout the whole process. I mean, I love people that send me stuff early, send me files that open, send me, photos in a Google Doc or a Dropbox or something easy. Keep track of your inventory. Obviously the gallery is also going to do that, but you also want to know where you have places. And then figure out also logistics of how you're getting work to them. Like, are they going to pay for shipping? Are you going to pay for shipping? Are you going to drive it to them? Just all of those kind of things are things to consider. And then things to look out for, exclusivity. Some galleries don't let you sell within a certain radius or, even with other galleries, or if you get a commission, some galleries make you still pay them a portion. Like just look out for stuff like that. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of because you don't want to apply to 6 galleries in South Carolina and then get into this one that's exclusive, and then have to kind of like back out of your other opportunities. So, it can be fine if it's a great gallery and they're selling a ton of your work, but you just want to, think about that. Some galleries charge monthly fees. I just think you should be aware of that. Like some galleries will pay you to have space. I mean, you'll have to pay them to have like wall space. I don't love that model because I think they have less incentive to sell your work. but it's again, a gallery to gallery choice. I mean, if they're selling your work and it's working and you're, being profitable, by all means do it. It's just something to look out for. Standard commission rates are usually 40 to 50%. So just kind of expect that. Who covers shipping? I'm an online gallery. So a lot of my artists will ship directly to customer and I will reimburse them shipping, but that's something to ask because a lot of people ask, should I build in shipping to my costs? Should I, do you charge for shipping? Those are important things to consider. When do they pay you? I'm very specific. I pay on the end of the month. I'm like, I don't want to, I want to get things out. Artists expect it. But some galleries are not that way. There's a lot of galleries I've heard that are very disorganized and don't have a specific schedule. So make sure you, stand up for yourself, have that, write a contract for yourself if you have to. Typically when it comes to contracts, they're going to provide you with one, but come prepared too. Like know what you want, make sure everything is organized. Can you set up commissions from them? So that's basically, if a designer came into their gallery or a client and asked for a commission of your work, is that something you could do together? Is that something you're willing to do? Just something to ask and think about. How long does the art stay up? Do they hold on to it for a certain period of time? If it doesn't sell, can you swap stuff out? What does all that look like? And then something to ask that I think is a good question is, how are they planning to market your work? Obviously, a lot of galleries are going to have a huge client base. That's why we work with galleries, especially when we're emerging artists. But, I want artists to work with me because I feel like I want to do the service of also helping them market their work to my extensive email list and Instagram following. And I try to be really forward with that so that it's like, before we even sell your work, I want, 1,000 more people to know who you are, so it's beyond just the sales. And so I think that's something important to ask as well. Okay. All right. So I kind of buzzed through that, but I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions just because I know there might be some questions about any of this. So if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question or ask it in the chat and then unmute, whatever works for you. But I'm opening the floor. So don't be shy.
I have a question.
Okay.
How much or I know you said that, it's important for us as artists to consider the gallery's audience. How much vice versa is the gallery considering your audience, and the other galleries that you may or may not be involved with?
Yeah. So I think it depends a little bit, but I think some galleries seek artists out and they're like, they have a following that can help us. I mean, I definitely consider it. I try to work with emerging artists. So if you have 300 followers, that is not a deterrent for me as an example. But on the flip side, if I see an artist and they want to work with me and they have a huge following in Texas, for example, I'm like, that's really great because I'm an online gallery and that could benefit my Louisiana artists, my Georgia artists. Like it is getting all of my other artists in front of their audience as well. So I definitely consider it, but it is not a make or break for me. If anything, it's just like, oh, you do have a great audience that can benefit the gallery as a whole. I think for non-online galleries, it's a little bit different because they're a lot of the times, and this is something I actually forgot to mention, but they're relying on, either their extensive client base from being, around for forever, or, you live in Charleston with me, tourism, it's like, I'm expecting a certain level of tourism. So a lot of the times they probably aren't really going to care about your audience because they're just kind of relying on foot traffic. But I mean, if you're maybe a big name in Charleston and you could bring people in the door, that's something too. And some galleries they'll work with you and they might do a show opening or something like that. And they'll say, send us your email list. Obviously it's going to go out to ours. And if you had an extensive email list of people in that city, that would be beneficial. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So it looks like we have another question. What if there's no contact info on the gallery page? So what I would say to that is you kind of got to do some digging, and that can look like finding an email somewhere. I mean, a lot of the times if you can find like an info at thescoutedstudio.com, you could start there. If you see it anywhere on the website, there's probably maybe a contact page somewhere on the site. That's an option too. You could just kind of blindly contact. Obviously it's not as ideal. A lot of the times too, they might list like, let's say Caroline at thescoutedstudio.com, but you want to reach out to Anna, let's say, because Anna's in charge of, I don't know if you would know this, but if you go to LinkedIn or something, and you see that Anna's in charge of artists coming in or whatever, then you could probably backtrack and figure out her email is probably Anna@thescoutedstudio.com by looking at other people's emails. I mean, that's kind of like sleuthing a little bit, but that is something to do. But typically I would say just try to find a contact page. Even if you're reaching out to like the info email, it's a start, it's a foot in the door. You know, you just, every gallery is a little bit different in that way. Any other questions for the gallery piece?
Haley,
Yes.
I just want to mention something that I came across, and maybe everybody knows about this, but I did not know about this for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And it's zapplication.org. It's zapplication.org. And I didn't realize, I mean, I figured somebody, but it's like, it houses all of the calls for artists in the country and maybe even the world. I haven't seen how extensive it is, but I was always looking for things in my region and trying to figure out, how do all these artists know where all these galleries and these exhibitions are, when they're happening. And I couldn't really figure it out until I saw there's kind of like this clearinghouse. I don't even know what the word is. It's just like they get the word out, and it's been very helpful to me to see what's available, what's coming up in my area this year. And it's a really good planning tool. So that's been very helpful. I don't know if there's other sites like this, and if there is, I'd love to know about them.
Yeah, I feel like if anyone knows of any others, maybe drop them in the chat, but that's a really good one. I think Zapplication, I've applied to shows through it before. I feel like it's very show based. It's a lot of, it is also a lot, you have to kind of sift through it. It's a lot of those like outdoor booth shows, which some people love those, some people don't. So you're going to have to kind of sift through what is of interest to you, but you can, like you said, search by region, which is great too. If you're trying to look for shows, like maybe you're in Charleston, but you're trying to reach a Nashville audience or something, you can search that way if you're looking to specifically kind of do shows in a certain area. So it's a good way to, I think, definitely look for shows. So that's definitely another good one. It looks like Cafe is another one for artists. I've heard of that one. I haven't actually used it myself, but I know a lot of artists in the membership use it. I feel like that's been dropped before.
Is it cafe.org.com? Does anybody know?
I don't know. If you know, put it in the chat.
All right. Well,
I have a question about follow-up.
Yes.
And I see somebody else ask that question too. Just how soon do you follow up? Oops, am I on? And how, I mean, I don't know. That's where I kind of like get stumped sometimes, is like, because you hear no answer is an answer sometimes, but that's not necessarily always true too, right?
Right. And this is something, and I'll talk about it. It's a little bit different for interior designers, but for galleries specifically, I think first look at what they responded. If they didn't respond at all, I think it's okay to follow up. I mean, if they didn't respond at all, I think it depends on the situation, but I would say if they didn't respond at all, I would almost just reapply in 6 months, like send maybe a couple of new pieces and throw it their way. I also would kind of read between the lines. If they do respond, is it, a hard no? You're going to want, if you do decide to reapply, you're going to want to reapply with something completely different, like a new style or something like that. If it's we're thinking about it, or, something that kind of feels like maybe later or something like that, I would say, circle back again. Like, I feel like 6 months is a good amount of time for them to kind of figure stuff out. I mean, 3 months is short, but I feel like I've had a lot of artists that have gotten to know from me that are now Scouted Studio full-time artists because they just developed their skills a little bit more, or maybe I had an artist leave that was painting something kind of similar to them, or they developed their style slightly. So I do think follow-up is great. I just think you want to give it enough time for things to actually like move, like art takes a while to move sometimes. So I think I would probably say 6 months just to give it a date.
Thank you.
Okay, so more questions. Let's see. A lot of people are posting stuff. Sorry, I'm sifting through these. Okay, may not matter, but should we save our PDF as a certain file title as to catch their attention in the email? That's a great question. I've never really thought about that. I would say it wouldn't hurt. I mean, I think maybe just save it as artist PDF document, artist resume. I mean, we're creative artists. I don't know. Think of something, but I think you could definitely name it what it is that would make them more likely to open it, and kind of basically tell all of my information is just this one PDF that you have to click on. I think that's a great idea. Okay. I'm reading this. Okay, so I came from a sales background where I was encouraged to engage the potential client with a conversation to learn a little bit more about why or if there is anything they're specifically looking for to better cater to the gallery. Is this appropriate? I think I read that too fast. The conversations. Are you asking, sorry, I might misunderstood this, but are you asking if you should ask that to the gallery? Like, is there anything you can do as the artist to better cater to the gallery?
Yeah.
I think that's a great question. I think it's kind of it's a two-way street. I think as artists, you know, the gallery is taking a cut. And so I think we really lean on galleries to help market us, get us in front of their audience. But I also think it is up to you to also talk about what's going on. I mean, I think if I work with an artist, I'm like, you're getting in front of my audience. I'm going to do marketing for you. But if you sit there and don't do anything, you got to kind of get it in front of your audience too. And I think it's, you know, I also want you to share, and that's mutually beneficial. And you're then therefore benefiting all the other artists in the gallery. So I do think that's actually a great question to ask the gallery specifically, because I think it shows you're engaged and you care with being in that company and the growth of their company. But every gallery might have a different way of how they, you know, obviously what you can do to benefit them.
So would that be appropriate to ask like as a follow-up email?
Like if you
If
get a
you're-
no, or if
So I
you,
gotta know, yeah.
huh? I think if you get a no, you could always say, you know, you will not always get a response. I always respond to people, but that's because I'm an art coach and I'm nice, I think. But you will not always get a response, but I think you can follow up and say, is there anything I could improve in my work to better, you know, to make me a better fit? And you might hear back. And if you do, you know, you're not going to hear back all the time, but you might get an answer like, oh, we just aren't taking that type. I mean, I have a lot of artists I've worked with who say, you know, I've had galleries say they're just not taking that style of artwork. And that's where it's like, it's not you, it's them, you know? So
Yeah, totally.
it's worth asking, but I will say you're 20% of the time going to get a response. It's not going to be, you know, a lot of galleries don't respond, which I think is kind of a shame. Like you have the time to check your inbox, in my opinion, but it's the reality of it. Okay. Any other questions, galleries? And there will be kind of open Q&A at the end too. So if you forget something or think of something, we can circle back. But if anyone has anything else related to what we're talking about, chime in.
I have another question.
Okay.
Kind of more so about when you're writing about yourself in your PDF and you're just kind of wanting to put your best foot forward. What is too much? Like, you know, maybe if you don't have a detailed resume, but you want to kind of share your personality and all that you've kind of done to get to this place. Like, is that a good idea, you know, to do in place of a good resume and in place of a, you know, a detailed resume? And what is too much to kind of like brag on yourself?
Well, I never think it's too much to brag on yourself, but it can be too much if you're sending multiple paragraphs, because people just probably aren't going to read that. I think keep it to like 2 paragraphs and call it a day. But I think stuff like that can be relevant. And something I would think about on kind of a broader level is, who are you? What is your brand? And like, who are the customers you're trying to reach? Like, who is your ideal customer? And if you feel like this gallery is definitely selling to your ideal customer, or you're a great fit, or it's going to enhance your brand, I think that's something you're going to want to imply in this document. So if you're, you have, you know, loud and kind of crazy work, and you're a funny and, you know, boisterous person, I think make that come forward in the PDF document. And if that's something you think is going to fit with their gallery, you're going to want to share that, because that kind of tells the story of who you are as an artist, which, you know, if they want to work with you and do shows and all of that, they kind of want to know that information. So I think it can make sense. And I think you can break it into your bio, which is where you can share more of that background of, you know, what you've done to get here. Like, even if you don't have a extensive resume, kind of like, well, I've donated to auctions, I've worked in galleries, I understand it from, you know, whatever it is. And then I think in the statement is where you can really say, this is why I create what I create. This is my style, and this is why. So that's how I sort of differentiate between the bio and the statement. And you don't have to have both in the PDF. If you don't feel like it. I mean, honestly, but I think that's sort of how I differentiate between the two, and you can include both.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so someone asked, does the Scouted Studio take applications from artists outside the US? Not right now, because we're online. I've run into some shipping issues. I used to, trying to work through that, but unfortunately shipping outside of the United States is way harder than it should be in such a digital age. So working through that, but I don't right now, but that's not that's a maybe follow up later. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to just looking at time, the designer piece, which will be a little bit faster just because it's similar in a lot of ways. But I think y'all probably have a lot of questions about that. And then I'll just open it up to Q&A for anything anyone thinks about between any of them. Okay, so, all right, designers. So in terms of outreach, how to research, I think it's really similar. You can Instagram, Google, look to other artists. I think a lot of us probably follow interior designers just because we're artists. We like beautiful things. We probably like beautiful spaces. We want beautiful spaces. We follow art. We probably follow designers. We like their style. So I think Instagram is a really great tool for that. Obviously there's things you can Google and stuff as well, but I think seeing what other artists are working with. So if you see an artist post a really beautiful home and you can click on it, see if they tagged a designer, maybe they worked with that designer. It's a good way to just start to compile a list. And again, I recommend, putting it into some kind of Excel document. And I actually, when I first started the Scouted Studio, I was like, I want to work with every designer in Charleston. And so I compiled, not actually, but basically Charleston and then the Southeast. And so I compiled a list and I ranked them on basically, am I a good fit for their style? Like go through and say, does my art, would it realistically go in one of these homes? I mean, I know we're not all interior designers, but just ask yourself that. If they're all minimalistic, plain, that kind of style, and you're crazy, loud, pink, maybe like the picture of this painting here, like maybe it's not a good fit, and that's okay. So I think you can include their name on there, but I think rank it by how realistic it is. Also, how big is the company? I mean, if it's like a one person, one interior designer versus a firm, with a ton of people, again, it might be easier to sort of get your name in there with the one person, but that doesn't mean not apply to all of them. But I just think ranking them on kind of how likely you are to get in based on location, style, price point, who is their customer, kind of similar to people that would want to buy your work, start there. And then how to reach out. I think, again, it's helpful to sort of get in front of them if you can, just to get your foot in the door. So follow them on social media. I mean, do not bombard them, but like, it's okay to like their stuff, maybe comment here and there, like make your name at least recognizable. I've definitely experienced, not that I'm an interior designer, but I've worked for interior designers before. And then with the Scouted Studio, if somebody, likes all of my stuff, or I see they give the little hearts on the stories on Instagram, you kind of get to know those people's names. And so when they reach out in an email, it's flagged in my mind a little bit. And it's not that, I know who they are more than anyone else if I don't follow them, but it's like I see the name and I'm just more likely to respond quickly. And I think it's just like, name recognition, it's a literal brain trigger. That's a real scientific thing. So you want to get in front of them. And again, you're going to want to reach out similarly to galleries if they're, if you don't know them. I think an email works really well. You'll want to include your PDF. I think I'm not going to go through the whole PDFs again because I think it can be very similar. The only things I think I might add a page for or consider adding on the pricing page is, are you going to offer a trade discount, which those are typically 10 to 20%, off the price for designers. And I can kind of talk about how designers work too, because I've worked with a lot of designers and actually worked for designers. So I can kind of go into that if people have questions, but trade discounts, a lot of them will want commissions. So I think breaking down your commission process, if that's something you're interested in on a page on your PDF, could be really great. I don't think galleries need to know that, but I think designers might benefit from knowing that. And I think framing options, depending on the designer, a lot of them might want to frame it themselves. They might be building, their room around your beautiful, huge piece. But I've also worked with some designers who in Charleston, they're like, I have an install today. Haley, what art do you have on hand? I need to fill a wall. And it's like, they need it framed, they need it there. And so I think being there working with both types of designers can benefit your business. Obviously, commissions and having your work the centerpiece of a room is amazing, but also having someone that wants to buy 5 pieces last minute is not a bad thing either. So I think understanding, the different types of designers, and then also explaining a framing process if you're willing to work with them or do the framing yourself, all of that. And then again, be real, be thoughtful, be yourself when reaching out to them. Messaging, again, very similar to galleries. If they are local, I think you could offer for them to take things out on approval. I think I work with a lot of people in Charleston, and they'll ask, can I just take 10 pieces knowing I'll probably only buy 5? And I'm like, yes, that's 5 more than I sold, earlier today. So I would much rather them take the pieces, actually let them hang them, see them in the space, let the clients see them. I think that's a really great opportunity if they're local. I think you do want to kind of set some boundaries on how long they can take it for. Some, they're creatives, they can be scatterbrained just like us. So I think having you can take it for 1 week and then I need it back. Or if you keep it for more than a week, I have your credit card info, I swipe it, I assume you want it. I mean, everyone does it a little bit differently, but I just think having a process, a designer's not going to run off with your art, but you don't want them having your art for 6 months and then something getting damaged or something. So just having a process for that. If they're not local, shipping processes, are you going to charge them for shipping? Is that included? All of that. Trade discounts, you want to definitely share that. Do you offer prints if it's a lower, even if it's not a lower price point, but some designers might not want original art. So share if you can make prints of something they want, or if you just offer prints in general, your commission process, obviously. And then in terms of messaging, make it a no-brainer for them. And I think this goes for galleries, reaching out to boutiques, reaching out to wholesalers, licensing, in any case, but I really think when you're working with a designer who has all these vendors reaching out to them all day long, like buy my sofa, buy my tables, buy my art, I think you really have to make it as easy for them as possible. And that's where I think when you can say, I'm local, I will drop it off at this on site, you can hold it for 1 week before I charge you, you can, it is really, here's my PDF with all of my information, here's my website, you get a discount code, you can check out and include your trade discount, whatever all of that looks like for you. But I think being really explicit in the email that this is a no-brainer, it's so easy, I can be that artist that gets you things right when you need it. I'm not going to be scatterbrained. Just being the organized one will make their lives a lot easier. And so that kind of goes on with answer any questions they might have before they even ask, which is include all of this information. Okay, so what to expect? You're going to get way more non-responses with designers because, not necessarily, but probably. And that is because they are going to use you on an as-need basis. So, you might get some of those, yeah, we'll use you when we can, but a lot of people just probably aren't going to respond. But the benefit of having a PDF is they can print that out, put it in their, vendor files or tack it up on their wall, all of that kind of stuff, which is why I think it's a benefit to have the PDF. But basically, to kind of talk about how designers work, as I mentioned, there's sort of 2 types. There's a lot of designers that they're designing a room and they're picking the artwork out with the process, and the artwork is very much, a part of the space, and they might commission you, they might commission a big piece, or, they know they want to buy 6 pieces from your website. But then there's also the I need finishing touches when the project is done people. And so both of those are an as-need basis. So they're probably not going to respond to you until they need you and they have a house that they're building that is a fit. And also you have to realize some designers, art is hard because a lot of clients, some of them already have art of their own. Clients are going to have opinions about art. So it's unlike a gallery where you're trying to get one person to say yes, the gallery owner be like, yes, I'm signing off on you. With a designer, you're getting the designers pitching your work, but then the client also has to say yes. So it is that second level of getting yeses. But once you get in with a designer that's a good fit, works with a client base similar to your client base, it starts to really smoothly flow. And it's one of those things, if you can get in with 2 designers, you're going to get a ton of commissions, a ton of business. So it is worth all the people that aren't going to not respond, but I just have to be real about that. So don't get discouraged. When I started the Scouted Studio, I reached out to 150 interior designers and maybe 10 responded. But over the course of that first year, I probably worked with 15 or 20 of them that never even responded to me. But then, later we're like, we have a project, we need art. And I'm like, I didn't even know you were interested in me because you never responded. So don't get discouraged. A lot of these people that don't even respond might circle back later. Yeah. So it was a crazy time, but it does pay off. Things to look out for with designers, timeframes. How organized are they? You know, do you need to step up to the plate and be the organized one? Are they going to be the organized one? They have a lot of things going on. So, you know, they're organizing the sofa being delivered and the rug and the fabric and you're just one small piece of that a lot of the time. So I think understanding like, how can you make it easy for them? How can you make it seamless, but also kind of stand up for yourself, have a contract, come to the table prepared, like knowing what to expect in case they are a little bit less organized or you're not their main priority. Because, you know, with the gallery, you're going to be their main priority. So I do think having a contract, because I think galleries will often present a contract to you. With the designers, I think it's going to kind of be on you to present something and just say, you know, this is kind of how I work. Even if it's like my commission contract template that I have, you could probably make something like that if they're getting a commission from you, or even tweak it if they're just buying your work, or a contract for taking stuff out on approval. Just having terms, and it doesn't have to be like a legal attorney wrote it contract, just a couple of bullet points that you both sign, just so everyone knows the terms. It makes you look professional. Everyone's kind of held liable. If anything, you know, it just makes things easier. Another thing, be ready to send invoices. I think a lot of people are like, when we first start out, we're like, oh, people are Venmoing me, or, you know, obviously as you grow, people might check out through your website, but I think you need to have a system in place for designers. So I work with QuickBooks and I just send my invoices through QuickBooks. They can pay with card, they can pay with check, they can pay with Venmo or PayPal, or it still offers all of those, but they are getting an invoice because they have to bill their client, and they're going to ask for an invoice. They're going to ask for the breakdown of shipping, the discount, all of that, because they need it for the record. So I think be prepared to send a proper invoice. And I don't care if that's how you do it, what system you use, but you do need to be prepared. Finally, are they tax exempt? And talk to your accountant, but know, you know, do you need to collect forms if you are not charging them sales tax? Because a lot of the time some designers will pass that sales tax along to their client. So the client pays the sales tax. So therefore you don't have to charge them sales tax, but you will need, I'm pretty sure you need to collect it's either a retail license or a resale license, but they're the same thing. But you would need to collect that to be able to like legally not charge them sales tax. So make sure you talk to your accountant and get that set up. That's something I lean on my accountant for, to make sure you're all squared away. If they are asking you, you know, can I be tax exempt? Just make sure you understand what that means and that you're taking all the necessary precautions to do that. Okay, so that's kind of the designer piece. I'm going to open it up again to questions, and then, you know, if you have other questions too about other stuff related to this, I am happy to kind of open the floor. So
I have one question, Haley.
Yes.
I use Square for proper invoicing,
Okay.
but it charges me. Does QuickBooks do that?
Yes. So you're going to pay a credit card, like a credit card processing fee. You're
Okay.
going to pay a credit card processing fee, unfortunately, on most cases. I mean, that's how they make money. And because the way the credit card companies work, I think they get a fee or something. So you're going to have to pay that in most cases, unfortunately. But I would cross compare and see if one charges less. Or even your website might charge less. So you could give them a direct link to your website too. And then yes, trade discount, 10 to 20%. I think anywhere in there is fine. I feel like a lot of people do 20, but I think 15 is fine too. I don't think anyone's going to not work with you if you feel like you have to do 15% or even 10. So that's kind of the general range. Any other questions?
Haley, can you just clarify, you said the 20% or 15% or whatever the discount could be, and then you said commission. I'm like a little confused. Is it either or, both and, what is it?
Oh, I was saying, sorry. Yes, I can clarify. So the 20% would be off your price, whatever that is. And then when I was talking about commission, I was talking about, are you doing commissions for them? Like, are you painting a piece for them? Not, are you giving them a commission? Fair question. I also was talking really fast. So anything else? And anything else outside of any of this, I'm happy to kind of open the floor to other stuff too. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Do interior designers typically take a commission?
So every person is a little bit different. From the experience of the designers I've worked with, typically the way they work, and they express this to their clients, so it's like all known, they, with most of the vendors they work with, typically get some kind of trade discount. So for, you know, for me, the client who is the designer's working for, they're like, well, you know, I can get you this $1,000 sofa, but I get it at cost, which is only $800. But the way the designer makes money is they bill for their hours of the design time, but they also upcharge. So I don't know that the sofa costs $800 because the client, usually the designer will then upcharge that 20 or 30%. So that's how the designer makes money, is that difference. So when you give them the 20% off the art, they're probably going to charge it to their client basically at the cost the art typically is, or a little bit more, you know, kind of in that range. And that difference is kind of where they make their money, that, and then also billing. But that's a lot of the times how they work.
Got it.
So anything else?
Yeah, Haley,
Yes.
can you hear me? Okay, so what if you have a piece in a gallery and they're
Mhm.
taking 50% off and the designer sees that piece in a gallery? How do you go up and above what's in the gallery, the cost in the gallery for that designer to get their extra 10 or 15%, or?
So typically I like for artists to have one pricing sheet across the board. So let's say you have one piece for easy math that's $100 at a gallery and $100, but you're giving it to a designer, so you're going to charge them 20% off, so it's $80. If you work with the gallery, they're going to take $50, so you're going to come to the table with $50 after that. If you work with a designer, you're going to come away with $80 because you gave them 20% off, if that math makes sense. Now, this is a great question to ask the galleries you work with. If a designer purchases from the gallery, is that gallery giving her a designer rate? And if they are, is that coming from your percentage, their percentage, or are you splitting it? Because if the gallery is offering the designer 20% off of the $100, you know, are you still making $50 and that's coming from their cut? Or is it coming from your cut and now all of a sudden you're only making $30 off the 100? So I think that's going to be different gallery to gallery. I mean, a lot of the times it might be split, like you each lose 10, but
Okay.
I feel like I need a whiteboard with the math, but
Yeah, okay, no, that makes sense. That's
something
so.
I would ask a gallery though, because I will say that's something that probably could happen. A lot of designers work with galleries, and so that's something to think about.
Okay. Also, one more question. My pricing on my website, you know, I need to stay consistent with what the gallery is pricing something, right? I can't, it needs to stay consistent correctly, because that's not fair to the gallery if I offer it a little bit less.
Yes. And I think one way, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, you know, through coaching and stuff, but if you feel like you have an audience here that maybe can't pay what the gallery is asking you to charge, to kind of bridge that gap, I think you can charge a little bit more and slowly raise your prices over time. I also think you can, maybe have different collections. Like, let's say you give the gallery your big work on canvas that's abstract, and then on your website, maybe you have smaller work on paper that is a little bit different. And I think that also will allow you to vary your pricing a little bit, because you can kind of claim like, well, they're different collections. Like, obviously they're different sizes, but also if they're different collections, I mean, you don't want a huge discrepancy, but that might give you a little bit more wiggle room to not completely lose the audience you have.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, let's see. I'm new and realizing working with a designer that their client budget and time frame is their focus. I would want to make an easy process to work with a designer. What else are some keywords to include that might be important working with a designer? Okay, so that's a great question. Basically, you know, what are other things you can include in your email, kind of keywords that might stand out to work with a designer? I think, can you color match is a great thing to offer. You know, if you provide me fabric, I can color match. I can, you know, maybe you like my floral paintings, but if you want that flower to be that blue that is the wall, I can do that. I think that's, you know, something great to offer. I think if you get to the point with a designer where, and this is a little bit different than this question, but that you are working together and you're doing a commission, I think sending them an info sheet, which again, I have that for sale on Etsy. It's in the membership too. The commission and info sheet, basically it goes with the contract, and then you send them an informational form, and it says like, send me any fabric samples. Do you want me to color match? What do you like? Like, you get them to answer all those questions so that you make sure you're providing exactly what they want and exactly what their client wants. I think in terms of other keywords I would include in the email, I think commenting on their style and how their style is similar to your style and how you could see your work fitting in their spaces, and like maybe even name dropping like a kitchen they did. And you're like, I could totally see my space, you know, my painting in that space, and kind of like hinting at that too, I think is something you could probably ask. So that was a great question. Anything else?
I have a question.
Okay.
What about consultancies and art agencies? Would the same kind of rules apply? I think they're like harder to find because they're not as visible as a gallery or a designer on things like Instagram. They're more like business to business.
Yeah.
How would you go about finding them, and would you just apply the same way?
Yes. So a lot of the time it's going to be different for all of them, which is like a terrible answer, but I think a lot of them you're going to find honestly on Google. You're going to have to do a little bit of a deep dive. I think LinkedIn actually could be a good place to find them, which I don't think is great for a lot of these other things, but I think LinkedIn could be a good way to kind of slide in and find some more of these consultancies, because that was a job I was looking for when I first got out of college. And so I went on LinkedIn looking for applications, but you could definitely go in and just look for the companies. So I think that's where I would start in terms of researching. And then in terms of reaching out, a lot of them might have application forms on their site once you get there. I've noticed that a lot of them have kind of a system for it. If not, I think, you know, doing what we're doing here and kind of at least having a strategic email to send to them is smart. And did you have another question with that? Okay. I couldn't remember if you asked like a third part, but that's probably what I would say. And one thing to remember with consultancies is when you're looking at them, really do a deep dive of who they're working with, because there's consultancies that sell original art, which might be what you're looking for. There's some that really work with reproductions and prints, and kind of, you know, they're doing the huge hotels where they want, you know, a print of your piece in every single room. Obviously also a great opportunity, but you're going to need to, you know, expect that they don't want original paintings. And then there's other consultancies that are more license based. They want to license your work, and that's kind of a whole third tier. So I think also doing the research before you reach out, because if they're more licensing based, you're going to want to probably tweak that PDF you're sending to focus on licensing versus to focus on, you know, here's all my original artwork you can buy, because they're gonna be like, okay, that's not what we do. We don't care. So, you know, doing your research is always important.
That struck a question with me about, am I muted? No, about restaurants
Mm-hmm.
and businesses or business places in town, similar to restaurants. If you've ever worked with them, like who is the decision maker on stuff like that and how that process goes, if you have any experience to that.
Yeah, so it depends. I have worked with, in most cases, when I've done it, I've worked with a designer who has done the restaurant, done the hotel, and that's actually a much more seamless process because they're used to working with artists, and they're like, we want these 18 pieces commission, and they're going in this hotel, so it's a really great opportunity. Are you willing to, you know, cut us a deal or something? And I'm like, absolutely, like that is great. But so a lot of the times it's designers making those decisions, because, you know, the owner of the restaurant probably doesn't necessarily have an eye for that, but that's not the case 100% of the time. One time, when the Sweetgrass, what's it called? The gallery at Sweetgrass, in Wild Dunes, when that whole new Wild Dunes complex was being built, I worked with a designer for some of the pieces, but also the head contractor, basically the guy that was building it. And his wife came in and bought a bunch of artwork from the Scattered Studio and was like, we're just going to put them up somewhere. So that isn't always the case, but sometimes like there is someone in charge who cares about art and they might reach out. But I would say if you're looking to get your work in these spaces, I would do the research of figuring out who's the designer behind the project. Because if it's a big project, there's going to be someone in charge of either an interior designer or someone in charge of like art, lighting, I mean, all of those kind of details, someone's going to be the point person for that has experience in it. So I think I would try to kind of do your research to figure out who that is, or if it's a restaurant group, you could probably look up the restaurant group and backtrack and figure out, do they work with the same designers every time, and reach out to that person. I mean, it's going to take some digging. It's not like they're just going to have that listed, but you can kind of like start to figure it out. Look on their Instagram. They're going to tag the designer on some of their projects. So kind of work backwards that way.
Cool. Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Okay, we're about at time, which I'm impressed we stayed on track. I'm going to just run through, in conclusion, kind of some final information, just other resources. I'm sure a lot of you know this stuff, so I'm going to kind of buzz through it, but obviously I have the podcast and the blog. Both are free. You know, I love doing them. If you're interested in being on the podcast, you can definitely reach out. I'm interviewing people for the summer and the fall. I'm like really working ahead, but if you have something really great happening in one of those months and you want to record a podcast talking about it, I'd love to, you know, help support you as well. I also have ebooks and templates that start at, you know, $10 to go to $55, but like the commission form and information sheet that I kind of name dropped a couple of times in here, that's $10. And it's on Etsy, and that's a really great resource. And then finally, the membership. A lot of you are members. I recognize a lot of you in here, but it starts at $10 a month and you get access to weekly videos like this. I mean, they're shorter and it's just me talking, but I want to do more live events like this. But the membership is closed and those spots open on March 20th for 1 week only. There's limited spots, and you know, there's different tiers. So if you pay like $35 a month, you get some coaching involved, and you can kind of read up on that yourself. I don't need to go into it on this call, but the spots are only open for 1 week and there's limited numbers. So if you are interested, even thinking about the membership, I would recommend putting your name on the wait list, because those people will get first access to sign up. So that can be found on my website, Instagram, and I'll include it in the email I send with this recording. And so definitely recommend that if you're even considering it, because you know, it's one of those things you could sign up for $10 a month, and if you don't like it, you can always cancel, and then it's just $10 lost. So something to think about if you enjoyed today's call. And then basically to round it out, I'm going to send you an email probably later today with this recording, depending on how long it takes me to figure out how to get that to you. So with the recording, I'm going to also send a little feedback form just to hear your thoughts on, did you like this? Would you like another one? What other topics would you like covered? Because I really liked this. I enjoyed doing it, but I also, you know, my feelings will not be hurt if you're like, that was not worth your time. So I'm going to send a feedback form. And if you would take the time, it's completely anonymous. I don't collect emails or anything. It's more just to hear, you know, of all these things I'm doing, what's working for you, and also where the holes, like what can I do to help you build your businesses? Because that's what I really care about. So that's kind of my spiel about myself, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was really, really, really fun for me. I do kind of feel like I was talking to myself when I was giving the presentation. I feel like I'm in school again, but it was really fun. And it was nice to see so many familiar faces, but also a lot of new ones. So thank you to everyone that came. All right. Well, I'm going to try to figure out how to end this, but thank you so much. And I guess everyone have a great Friday.
Thank you.
All right. Let me figure out how to stop sharing and
Appreciate it, Haley. Thank you.
all right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.